Next up, you may have seen Clay's books. You may know him from Rain Dancer or Three Things I Know or Walking Tall, The Upside of Being Small, and other stuff. You may have seen his web articles, How I Talk to White People About Racism. If you were in the Magic Kingdom in Orlando in the 80s, you may have seen him in 100 parades or shows. If you've ever seen the Radio City Christmas Spectacular, you may have seen Clay in any one of the 12 seasons that he did that show. If, depending on what room you are in on property, the amenities in the Disney Hotel were designed by Clay. Clay has a great story, a unique story, very applicable to our industry. I'm very pleased that he could be here. There's only one, Clay Rivers.
Thanks, Steve. How's everybody? So, thanks to TEA for having me here today. At first glance, and second, you'll notice that I'm black and unusually short. But if you look a little closer and listen, you'll discover that we have a lot more in common than your eyes would have you believe. Since many of you probably haven't had the pleasure of knowing someone like me, I'm going to answer 4 of the most popular questions that people want to ask me, but don't. The correct terminology for someone born with any one of the 200 plus documented types of dwarfism is short-statured, dwarf, or little person. Midget is derogatory, period. I'm not so fond of labels, so you can just call me by name. As far as my family goes, my father was 6'1", my mom is 5'8", and my siblings are all average height. And all of my uncles are tall, 6'3" tall. I buy all of my clothes off the rack except for suits. The downside is that all of my slacks and long sleeve shirts have to be altered. The upside is that some things like this shirt and shoes I can get in the kids section of department stores. And the bonus question, am I dating? No. But if you guys know a guy who's smart, funny, independent, with great character and a good sense of humor, please talk to me after we're done here. Let's see, kind of threw me with the laugh there. It's good though. Today, you'll hear about ethics and citizenship in today's global community. And I'm here to stress the importance of challenges, diversity, and inclusion in building immersive experiences for everyone. So, there's no surgical procedure, no pill that will markedly change my height. What do I do with that? Well, I could sit in a corner and cry, poor, poor, pitiful me, but that's not me. And it wouldn't change anything. For the longest time, I tried to deny the existence of those things that make me unique, and that didn't work either. So once I realized that God didn't create me to be like everyone else, I was able to change the way I saw myself, and in turn, that changed the way other people perceive me. How does that happen, you're wondering? Well, I face the specific combination of traits that make me unique. I embrace them and choose to live my life with all of me fully engaged. Doing so has enabled me to have some pretty awesome experiences, like becoming an award-winning art director for the Walt Disney World, to drive across country alone, design merchandise for the Disney stores, assist in the planning of theme parks at Walt Disney Imagineering, perform in TV and film, okay, one film, travel around the world, perform on Broadway, author 3 books, and now I can add speaking to this illustrious group to my accomplishments. So look, everyone faces challenges. Everyone. It just so happens that for people with disabilities, our challenges are kind of out there for everyone to see. You know, my point is this, disabled or not, we're all called to embrace all that we are and strive to become all that God has created us to be. All right. Stay. All right. Back when I was in college, I applied for a job at Disney. I naively thought that since I was a communications major, they would give me a marketing internship just because I asked for one. The interviewer saw on my application that I had theater experience, and 30 minutes later, I was ushered into an impromptu character audition and costume fitting. And before I arrived home from my interview, Disney called with an offer for me to become Donald Duck's best friend. I was not thrilled at all. I wanted a job because of my skills, not because of my size, but I needed the money, so I accepted their offer. And I hated it, every minute of it. Well, life has a funny way of working out. A couple years into the job, I grew to love it and excelled at it. I was cast in parades and shows and televised specials and promotional tours all around the world. I expressed an interest in moving up the corporate ladder, like the rest of my coworkers, but I was routinely passed over because I was more valuable to the department as Donald Duck's best friend. I didn't want to be in characters for the rest of my life. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just wanted a more corporate career path. And the only way to make that possible was to go back to college and finish my degree. I applied and transferred to Rollins, a small liberal arts college just north of Orlando, and was accepted. A month before classes started, I told my supervisors of my plans to finish my degree and asked if they could cover me for the last show of the day on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That was a whopping 2 shows out of 25 that my cast performed in a week. A few days later, one of my supervisors told me that my request had been denied. At that moment, I felt the veins in my neck start to swell and throb. But I calmly left her office and registered for classes. The first year classes rolled around, and at 5:30, the Tomorrowland Theater was packed with people waiting to see the last show of the day, the 6 o'clock show. And the one understudy for my part had already left for the day. I had a documented history of knee injuries and flare-ups and chose that time to report a flare-up. I went to first aid and was released from the rest of my shift. 15 minutes before curtain, the show was canceled, and I went off to class. My supervisors wanted to kick me off the show, but the show directors pulled rank and kept me on the following Thursday, and every Tuesday and Thursday after that. A sub was scheduled to cover me for the last 2 shows of the day. 2 years later, I finished my degree and eventually transitioned into a full-time graphic design position at the Disney University. The point of my story is not how to single-handedly take down a show. I know the Walt Disney Company goes out of its way to develop talent within its ranks. Okay, I'm getting good at this. The point of my story is this. As employers, to view your employees with a perceived notion of who they are and what they're capable of is short-sighted. Good leaders look beyond their employees' outward appearance and their department's needs. In order to retain talent, great leaders enhance and develop their team members' skills. before we can even think about inclusion, we have to talk about bias and exclusion. Biases exist. We all have them, good and bad. The things we like, we draw to us. The things we don't, we push away. And of course, the majority of us try to rein in our biases. But we all have biases that we're unaware of. And more often than not, we realize those biases exist only after we've stepped in a huge pile of bias. When it comes to things like Chinese food versus Italian, Yankees versus the Mets, or choosing to vacation in the mountains versus the beach, nobody has a problem thinking about their biases. But when we talk about biases in relation to people, everybody gets all freaked out. As well they should. You know why? Because thinking about biases in reference to people means we have to ask ourselves hard questions. Have I ever let my own personal biases about people get in the way? Do I have a bias for a more uniform environment? Of course you have. And of course you do. We all do. If you've drawn people near you, you've certainly pushed other people away. Exclusion is a pretty simple concept to grasp. The dictionary program on my Mac defines exclusion as a process or state of exclusion. Great. So what does exclude mean? To deny someone access to or bar someone from a place, group, or privilege. Keep something out of place, to remove from consideration, to rule out, to prevent the occurrence of. Sound familiar? Sounds like a lot of prejudice to me. And since we humans are so terribly creative, we've developed biases about one another for just about everything. Age, sex, race, class, appearance, weight, size, religion, sexual orientation, country of origin, ethnicity. Hey, you think it's tough to honestly answer questions about bias and exclusion? You should try and be on the receiving end of exclusion. Here's a story. 2012, I visited the 9/11 Memorial at the World Trade Center, a few months after it opened. I read about the waterfalls and the footprints of the towers and how they were surrounded by these stunning bronze parapets inscribed with the names of the victims. A transcendent moment, indeed. I told my friends about it and made reservations for us. We get there, right? And we're amazed at how serene it is. If you haven't been, you have to go. And at the time, the new tower was going up, and I stroll over with my friends to the South Pool for my transcendent moment. The height of my visit, seeing the huge imprints with the waterfall fountain thing. Unfortunately, my transcendent moment was obscured by the height of the wall. The wall is this high. My friends and I, all little people, we walk completely around the South Fountain thinking, surely there's some cutout where we can sneak a peek, or there's some elevated area specifically for those with limited mobility. Nuh-uh. Not that day. I guess they forgot that people in wheelchairs, motorized chairs, kids, or the vertically challenged might want to visit the plaza and want the same experience as everyone else. Everyone has the same experience checking out the names of the victims and viewing out the fountains, right? Only if you're taller than a third grader. I know the decision to make the parapet X height wasn't capriciously made, nor was it intended as a personal affront. Decisions like that never are, unless you're the person negatively impacted. See, diversity isn't the issue. There's 7.5 billion people on the planet, and no two are exactly alike. The human race has mastered diversity. The issue is inclusion. Think about the people on your teams. Think about the people in this room. if they look like you, think like you, and act like you, you're not doing diversity. You're doing uniformity. Inclusion is a choice. It's a conscious choice. And as key influencers who design experience for people, all around the world, with different cultural, ethnic, religious backgrounds and physicalities, single groupthink limits your potential. So, after the speeches are done and the awards have been given out, and you're back in your offices, what are you going to do? Continue assembling teams that are homogenous in point of view and experience, but in reality fall short of being truly transcendent? Or are you going to put an effort into assembling teams that are more diverse to make the experiences you create accessible to everyone? Hold on, I gotta do the thing again. Okay. A person's physical disability, race, age, gender, ethnicity, nationality, religious belief, or sexual orientation does not render them unable to make a meaningful contribution to your team. Individuals with diverse backgrounds and physicalities are simply people who face and embrace a different set of challenges, and because of that, they bring a broader point of view, broader than you can imagine. One more time. Research has proven that companies with more diverse personnel are more profitable, more creative, and more respected in the marketplace. Including diverse perspectives doesn't make people, companies, or products weak. Including people of diverse perspective makes you, your company, and your products strong, vibrant, and more attuned to the world around them. So, if you're interested in reading more about my journey to self-acceptance, for the next 24 hours, you can download a complimentary iPad-compatible version of my memoir, Walking Tall, a memoir about the upside of small and other stuff. And yeah, there it is. You can get it there, that web address. And just use the password TEA. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Clay. We've got a few minutes for questions. You represent so many categories all at once for the topics that you address here. So, questions? Okay, I've got one. In the example that you cited about showbiz is in the Tomorrowland stage and taking down the show, within the management, the entertainment management, after that, was there a net positive effect for you or a net negative effect for you?
I have to say it was just pretty much neutral. Things just kind of stayed the same. I mean, there was immediate, well, I can't believe you did that. You know, I can't believe we're trusting you in this show. But I think further down the line, people realized that I was serious about my future and what I needed to do to fulfill who I am.
Yes. Clara.
As a visually impaired person, I have found that technology is actually making things more, it's actually making things less inclusive for me. For example, 3D, I can't see 3D. Virtual reality, I can't experience. And so I was just wondering for you, is technology making things more inclusive, or is it opening doors or closing them for you?
Opening doors. Because I'm not so much, I haven't seen Donald Duck in years, so I'm totally removed from that. I'm really now like full-time writer, designer. So technology is great. Ask me about social media. That's my friend.
Questions going once? Yes.
I thought you said that you had a bad attitude about yourself and that you changed your attitude about yourself and that changed the way other people perceived you. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
And so what I want to know is, how did you make that switch? Can you remember how you did that?
Well, let's see. Yes. For me, it's really all about faith, um, and and that's really important to me. And I understand that, we're all on our own spiritual journey, but faith just really clinched it for me. Um, it really comes down to me owning all of these seemingly disparate parts, and seeing this as part of God's plan. You this is a classic example. It's a little sexist, but please forgive me. Um, you guys know Jennifer Lopez, right? Well, when she first came on the scene, she didn't own her assets. And so, you remember when the George Clooney movie that she was in? Yes. So, in that movie, I just remember a lot of people saying, do you see that? That was more of the star in the movie than she was. But when she owned it, took ownership of it and claimed it, we became more comfortable with her. Does that make sense? When people when they own themselves, that gives other people permission to like them. Hopefully, you now like me a bit more than earlier because I'm admitting to. We can talk about me being short. We can talk about me being black. Does that make sense?
Questions going once? Clay, do you have any questions for the group, or?
Is there anybody here from the World Trade Center? Ah.
Yes, Pat.
Thank you. That's a very beautiful presentation you made. Now, I have a few more sort of specific hardware kind of questions for you that might help this room when they are designing future attractions. Besides finding a parapet that you can't see over or through, are there other things that you can recollect that are hot buttons for this group?
Not really. I think the reason that I use that example is just because it was so unusual. You know, um, little people are kind of fortunate in that we get to dovetail on the mobile impaired folks because there are allowances that are made for them that kind of fit us as well. But as far as any real bugaboos, if every place could have escalators, that would be wonderful on my knees.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks,
Thank you,
y'all.
Clay.